Any other thoughts?
Yeah, Gilbert, just a quick one. And I think in this case, there's a cautionary aspect of this that it's got to be about execution, because a handheld device is intensely personal to the consumer because you have it in your pocket, you're holding it in your hand. And I would just advise careful consideration that these are opt-in types of programs so that you're not being too intrusive in a highly personal way, which could not just not be effective, but could have kind of a negative impact, with a very personal experience of someone carrying a handheld device.
Can you please take out your playbook and share your insights on how to grow multicultural budgets? Gary, I'm actually going to start with you. You deal with so many companies that are, again, in all of those levels. Give us some of the insights as to how to really build it up.
Well, actually, you're probably the best person in this room to talk about that, with your experience at Sears from a long time ago. But having said that, I think it really depends where you are in your continuum. If you're just kind of starting something, then you're going to have to allocate your money, believe it or not, on internal communications. That's something that is not dealt with enough. How you spend limited time and money is decided by your colleagues and their priorities. And so the first thing I would do, actually really independent of how far you are, is to make sure that you're on the same page with your colleagues, those people that make decisions regarding budgets. And if you want to do something interesting as a litmus test, convene a meeting of 10 of your colleagues from anywhere and just say it's about sort of multicultural, and ask them how do they define this topic, and you'll get different definitions. Someone will say diversity, and that will mean something different even to other people. Someone will say multicultural. So you've got to get on the same page by starting with a single word, and that a common definition emanating from that, and strategies that can be built upon that understanding.
You should always tap multicultural agency first if you are indeed committed to this market.
Wonderful. Gary, any final thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I would consider a child. That was a joke. Are you guys tired? Anyways, there's a strategic sort of, perspective, I think, that bears direct impact on this, and it's something that all of you, regardless of what you do at your companies, has probably experienced, and that's this notion of globalization and consolidation within that. So the client bases are shrinking because of consolidation just from a client perspective, if you're from that vein. The infrastructure to serve them is also consolidating. If you look in this industry and you look at the holding companies of the likes of WPP, Omnicom, and all that, there aren't too many independently owned Hispanic agencies. You're one of them, but there aren't too many. And so, there are these larger forces that are certainly affecting this industry. And if I were, in an agency business, I would really be working hard to move up the food chain so that you bring, added kind of consultative value to clients and defend your positions, because I think the agency business is in flux and needs to address that, and I'm sure they are through AHA and other means.
Can I use Gary's time that he gave up? Just because I gave my first one. Oh, okay. I could use his time.
No, let her speak.
I also want to add on to
Gary.
Why did you look at me with skepticism?
No. Final words of wisdom.
I think we're all, I'll tell you one thing for sure, we'll all be 10 years older.
No.
10
pounds heavier.
At least, whenever I'm asked to try to prognosticate, something. I actually gave a speech last week in Washington, and I actually had a crystal ball, one of those little snowflake balls, and I looked into it, and I started rubbing it, and didn't even laugh, which is why I didn't bring it. So, but what it's going to look like, I think in 2018, I basically really agree with the global question, and that's apparent already. And I actually had this image, and I would love you or someone who can inform me on this, during the opening ceremony of the Olympics, when the acrobats were crawling all over the globe. I don't know if you remember that. And and then for a very brief period of time, it became a map. it became a globe for a very short period of time. These bars where people were all over became a globe. And I have to tell you, the hairs on my neck stood up. I found it a little creepy. And the reason I found it, a little creepy is because like people saw sort of crawling all over this planet. And it looked very crowded. And Thomas Friedman wrote this book, Hot, Flat, and Crowded, and it's just creepy, So I think multiculturalism is certainly going to be everywhere. That is already happening. And I think, communications about that, I'm not sure it's going to be so much about communications. I think they're going to be other things, like how we touch one another, and what does it mean to actually embrace, as a human being. And I see a big trend towards kind of humanizing the statistics and humanizing the things that we're talking about with real human contact.
Whoa.
He scores!
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you. We got a couple of minutes for questions, but I do want to upfront thank you very much for, again, being here today and sharing words of wisdom. This question is for the pretty one.
Okay.
Gary.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And
Yes.
by the way, that is how it's addressed. So,
Do you think there'll come a time where we stop talking about labels like Asian American, African American, or whatever, and really talk about life stages? Because perhaps that's a way of including everybody without bringing up the race thing.
And just to build on that a little bit, Cheeky, I think life stage is a little different than lifestyle, similar but a little bit different. I love the idea of life stages. We're doing some work in that area. And if you look at the things that people have in common, it's true, we share things like a birth. But the way that a Hispanic family experiences a birth is very different than, let's say, an Anglo family, because when, like, say, a hospital visit, the typical Anglo has 2.5 people visit them, a typical Latino family has 9. And so there are questions about visiting hours or questions about infrastructure, a place where people can sit, and all types of touch point sorts of things, and if you look at like passage to adulthood, so let's say Jewish people have bar mitzvahs, but that's at 13. There are quinceañeras, which are 15 for Hispanic. There's Sweet 16 in the Anglo market. So I think that there are culturally relevant opportunities from a marketing standpoint to speak directly to groups of people who are experiencing the same life stages, but in a slightly different way or a slightly different time.
thank you. Thumbs up. Now you could stay there.